Yes, Louis Lang, Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada.
And who is Louis Lang?
Well, I'm a retired postal worker. I've worked at the Ottawa Mail Processing Plant for over 40 years as a sorter. And during that time, I was very active in the trade union there, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. So I served as a officer in the executive, various positions, shop steward, chief steward, and I was local president in Ottawa for a number of terms as well. So I have a lot of experience representing workers' issues, compensation issues, appeals of all kinds, human rights appeals. So over the years I did a lot of these things, and I think that working in a defense organization defending the rights of the workers is a very good experience for becoming a member of parliament and doing the same thing for the whole circumscription.
And what has drawn you into politics?
Well, to be honest with you, just being in that situation where postal workers, every time we had contract negotiations, we were negotiating directly with the cabinet, really. So every negotiation was political. So we learned over the years that in order to be able to get proper wages and working conditions, that we had to involve ourselves politically and put pressure on the government to recognize the problems in the post office, the working conditions that we faced. At that time there was a lot of automation introduced. So all of these things were political questions, and that's what really drew me into politics. But of course, when I was much younger, and my university days, it's a long time ago, long before you, the war in Vietnam was a big issue that I was involved in. So, I've been involved in politics almost all my adult life.
Why is the Marxist-Leninist Party the right party for you?
The Marxist-Leninist Party is the only party right now in these elections that is raising the issue that the democratic process needs renewal. The situation, the present system of representative democracy, as it exists, it does not represent, it's in total crisis. You can see what's happening all across the country, where these parties are going around making all kinds of promises about spending money, throwing money at problems, and telling people that if they get elected that they will represent them. And each time it turns out to be not true. They don't get represented. And if you look at the way the parliamentary system actually works, even the MPs who get elected, who sit in the House of Commons, they don't have any really role to play in the decision making. They're just under the discipline of the party to vote whichever way the party wants. All the decisions are left to the executive, the Prime Minister's office and the cabinet to some extent. So this means that representative democracy doesn't do the job of representing the people properly. So our party is putting forward the issue of renewal of the democratic process, whereby the political parties shouldn't have all the power to nominate candidates and then just tell people that, well, you choose between these people. The people should have their own organizations established where they can pick their own candidates who are responsible to, who can have to answer back to where they were nominated from. So if the political parties, we're not asking them to give up all their power, we're just asking them to share their power with the people, let the people choose their candidates, and when they come to the House of Commons, those people will be responsible directly to the electorate and not to any political party. And if the whole House of Commons is set up in such a way that the political parties don't dominate, then the people who are in the House of Commons in the end, they can decide who's going to be the Prime Minister, they can decide who's going to be the cabinet, and then all of this partisan infighting will be eliminated, or at least that there will be an attempt to eliminate it, and the people's problems will be considered, because right now the people's problems are not considered. Various things are put on the agenda, like the pipelines and other things, and people are just simply told, well, you choose, either you go with the Liberals or the Conservatives, and or the Green Party or whoever, and the rest is left to some experts to deal with. So we think that the The agenda should be based on the actual problems that people face in the society, and that these are the problems that should be looked at. The solutions come from the very people themselves who face these problems, and the resolutions are done in such a way that they favor the people. They don't favor some, they don't just favor some private interest, the way it goes now. Because all the solutions that are being put forward by the Liberals and the Conservatives is based on accommodating one of the big enterprises like SNC-Lavalin or whoever. That was a good example of how the government is more attached to the interests of those corporations than they are to dealing with the problems of the people. So the problems can't be solved by giving public funds to these corporations, trying to incite them to create jobs, like Trudeau was saying that he had to defend these jobs. Well, he's not defending anything, because SNC-Lavalin will do whatever they have to make maximum profit. And if that means eliminating jobs, they will. Same thing happened in Bombardier. The Quebec government and the federal government gave them millions and millions of dollars to try to maintain the C-Series, that new airplane. And in the end, Bombardier had to sell their part to Airbus because they couldn't maintain the situation. So all of that money has gone to a big monopoly, aeronautics monopoly in Europe, who got all that benefit of all that technology that was developed with public funds. They got all that for nothing.
And as far as the Pontiac riding specifically, and within the Pontiac riding, this area, which is called MRC Pontiac, or Municipality of Pontiac as well, what are your major concerns for this region specifically?
Well, obviously the major concerns for this region are the level of poverty, in the sense that there is a lack of industry, there's lack of economic development. The agricultural sector is pretty well devastated, in the sense that no young person is going to be willing to take over a family farm, because the way the economy is organized. It's organized in favor of the larger corporations, and whatever natural resources that exist in the Pontiac, whether it's forestry or mining. Some companies, as I said earlier, are paid to come in, and according to the philosophy that is put forward by the Liberals and the Conservatives, this creates jobs. But when the natural resources are exhausted, when everything is exploited to the maximum, then the company closes up shop. So these single industry towns become devastated. And the other aspect of that is that all throughout the process, when these corporations make money out of either exploiting the forestry or some other industry, the profits that they make don't stay here. They go to the headquarters of wherever this company comes from, whether it's the United States or some other country. So what we need in the Pontiac, I think, is some kind of organization, whether on the agricultural level or on the commercial level, local organizations that are able to establish cooperatives that can provide incentives to people to farm, that can provide markets, that can decide on the prices. It's like the system of the way the supply management works in Quebec for milk and eggs, which, by the way, is all constantly being undermined by these international treaties. Like a large part of the Quebec production of milk is being threatened by this new deal with Mexico and the U.S. So these are things that the control over these things, the decision over these things, should remain in the local area among the people who are most affected by it, and not be made by someone out from the outside.
So if you are elected, 4 years from now, what would you like to look back on and say that you accomplished?
That's a good question. I think that to be realistic, I don't think that we're going to change the system overnight. because it's been like this for 150 years since Confederation. We've been alternating between the liberals and the conservatives and getting the same thing, which is nothing in terms of democracy. So I think the main thing that we can achieve is that for the next 4 years, what I would do is I would go from community to community and encourage people to establish their own organizations so that they could meet regularly, discuss the problems and put those problems forward, and then develop solutions and then use those in order to advance the situation in favor of the people. So if in 4 years I was able to do that in all the different communities in the Pontiac, I would consider that to be some success. And once the people are organized to put forward their own demands using their own voice, then this is something that can't be stopped. It's going to develop. It's just like the example of the youth against the climate change issue. Once the youth started to get into motion, you can't stop that. Like, it's getting bigger and bigger all over the world. Millions of these youth are not going to take any more bullshit about, you know, we're taking this action and that action and we need economic development. They're saying we need to stop we need to stop the pollution of the environment, we need to stop the destruction of the environment now, and the decisions have to be made, otherwise the life of the youth are at stake. So I think that that's one type of organization that is an example of what can be done at other levels of society in order to advance the problems that the people have, based on their own voice, not being represented by somebody else, based on their own demands and their own needs.
I'm just going to get your views or your take on a few specific issues here.
Okay.
So, where are you on nuclear energy in general and Chalk River in particular?
Well, that's something that I've been following for a long time, because the problem with the nuclear issue in Chalk River is something that has been started by the Harper government. In 2011, around the time between 2009 and 2011, the Harper government made plans to sell Atomic Energy Canada to SNC-Lavalin for $15 million. They practically gave it to them. I've written several articles on this and I can send them to you, but they're fairly long. So the point is that what the Harper government started was a privatization of nuclear energy. So all of the atomic energy plants that they have, like Darlington and others where Atomic Energy ran them, they were sold to SNC-Lavalin for practically nothing. So, and then the other thing that Harper did was he turned over the management of the Chalk River nuclear facilities to a private consortium. So it's still run by the government, but it's owned by the government, but it's managed by this private consortium. SNC-Lavalin is one of them, but there's a number of others. I can't remember all their names. So the point that's important to seize here is that by destroying that Crown Corporation, Atomic Energy of Canada, which was in control of the nuclear system, what Harper did was he put a very important public asset into the hands of private enterprise. So all of the decisions that are made, whether it's to refurbish a plant or how to run a plant, or now the issue of storing the nuclear waste, all of these decisions are being made by private interests for the sake of private interests. So the bottom line is always profit. So now the plan here is to create this nuclear waste, near-surface nuclear waste thing in Chalk River, and to attract people from all over the country and even in the States to bring their nuclear waste here, which of course is in violation of all scientific reasoning and logic, because the half-life of these waste materials is thousands and thousands of years, and less than half a mile from the shores of the Ottawa River. It's insanity. So, of course, we're against building of this nuclear dump in Chalk River, right next to the water. But what we're most against is the fact that all of these things have been privatized and are in the private hands. So After Harper was finished and he was defeated, the Liberals said they would make changes, but they're following the same policy. They didn't change anything. So the same issue is at stake here. So our position is that public assets that the public need, like healthcare, whether it's healthcare, education, and the same for electricity, nuclear energy, water, these are things that are necessities of life. Anything that is a necessity of life, especially when you deal with something like nuclear energy, it has to be under public control. It can't be in the hands of a private corporation, because then everything will be done for the sake of profit. And that means that the final decision is not made thinking of the future for the people that are in the area. It's made with the intention of making more and more profit. So we think that of course, that nuclear waste, near surface waste dump should not be built, but we think that the entire nuclear industry should be regulated and put under government control, so that it's the public interest which is primary in how nuclear energy is exploited and how we deal with the problem of nuclear waste.
Where are you on climate change?
Well, climate change is a very similar situation, in the sense that there are all kinds of decisions that are made that don't, like the youth pointed out, that all of the decisions are made in terms of what is best for the greatest economic development. So the issue with climate change, that it comes down to, of course, you know, you can give lots of examples of how the climate, how the various political parties are not listening to the scientists, they're not paying attention to the fact that it's an emergency, they're not looking at it from the point of view that decisions have to be made now in a serious way, as the youth pointed out. So we don't want to go over all that, but the important point I think that we need to make is that where the decisions are made, how are these decisions made, and who makes them? And all of the difference between our party and the other parties, and that includes, like, some people think that the Green Party has the solutions because of their Green New Initiative or whatever, their program. But the Green Party and others, none of them explain what is the block to changing the situation. So what is blocking us from taking a new road? What is blocking us from changing the direction and of the economy so that it's environmentally friendly? And the other aspect is, what force is capable of bringing about a change? So our party's dealing with that, and we're saying that the decisions have to be made by the people in specific areas in order to determine what should be done in terms of economic development and what serves the environment. And of course, this includes the indigenous people whose lands are being destroyed, and these indigenous people are the protectors of this land, and they fight in various ways in order to defend their birthright and their hereditary rights. So to our way of thinking, the issue of the environment can best be answered by the resistance struggles that the people are waging all over the country in different areas against the pipeline, against various other things, and the youth explained it very well. It's that resistance movement of the people and the indigenous people which is the answer to solving the problem of the environment.
And where are you on Quebec's new secularism bill there, Bill 21?
Well, listen, obviously the issue of, first of all, Bill 21, which deals with religious symbols and not allowing people to have any religious symbols on them, has nothing to do with secularism, because we already have a secular state. The government is not supposed to be linked to religion. So, and various of these things that they're talking about, like turbans, they're not religious symbols. They're cultural things. The hijab, and these are things that are cultural. So we don't think that it's correct for a government to be legislating the rights and the beliefs of people in their either cultural or religious beliefs. We think that people have the right to conscience, they have the right to decide what to believe, what not to believe, and the government has no business legislating in that. It has nothing to do with secularism, because it's the government that has to be separated from religion. And if they want to be so secular, then why don't they remove the cross from the National Assembly? But that cross is still there. So it's hard to talk about secularism when the government is putting forward all of these ideas. And to be honest with you, I think, in my opinion, some of these things are being put forward as a means to divide the people, to divert the people from looking at what the real issues are. Because is this a big issue in Quebec, that somebody's wearing a turban or a hijab? Is this preventing Quebec from developing its economic future, or from putting forward any kind of solutions to their problems in either in education or health, or the workers who get legislated back to work, or the workers who are locked out? There are all kinds of problems in Quebec, and why legislate on this one thing? I think it's a diversionary issue, and we are opposed to the legislation.
Any other comments you wanna make or tell people?
No, I think I've already spoken about the issue of the renewal of the democracy, which we think is key, because we're told that elections is the greatest symbol of the democracy of our country. But if you look at the way elections function, there is no democracy in the elections. The candidates are controlled by the major political parties. The issues are controlled by the parties through the main media. So the people's agenda never comes out. There is no semblance of democracy in any aspect of the elections, and the people only get to vote. At the end of the day, they get to choose one or another candidate. So if that is the sum total of democracy, then there's something wrong. So we think that there's much more, that democracy, there has to be a battle for democracy, which means that the voice of the people has to be heard, and we need organizations of the people in order to put that forward. So that's really the key to defending democracy.
Is there not a contradiction there in that you're running in this election, you said, but on the same hand, this democratic system isn't working? Is there some sort of divide there, or is there?
I don't. Well, I mean, what are we supposed to do? We don't have any illusions that even if a bunch of us get elected, or whoever, we have 50 candidates, by the way, across the country, 25 women and 25 men. So we have equal men and women. And even if all of us get elected, we don't believe that this is going to change the situation. But what we want to do is we want to cause discussion, and we want to use the opportunity to encourage people to establish their own organizations and to speak in their own name. And for that purpose, the other thing I wanted to mention is that we have established a website with a daily bulletin that comes out. It's called Renewal Update. And in that purpose of that website and that bulletin is to give everybody an opportunity to speak in their own voice, in their own name, and send in problems and issues that they want to raise in the elections. So we've created a sort of a platform for people to put their own views forward, and that website is at cpcml.ca.
Awesome, thank you.